Hello and welcome back to Automotive Tales. On today's episode, we're doing a review of all of the Concours of Elegance type events we have been to this year to work out which one is the best. So join me as we review the London Concours, Salon Prive and the Concours of Elegance at Hampton Court Palace. So how are we going to decipher which of these events is the best? Well, I've come up with a scoring criteria, and we're going to go through each of the criteria and score each of the events. So the scoring criteria is a 1 to 5. I'm effectively scoring 1, 3 and 5. And where there's a bit of an indecisiveness, I've got 2 and 4 as my options in between. So I'm going to start with overall size of the event. So we've got 3 events, the biggest of which is very clearly Concours of Elegance. So Concours of Elegance wins a 5 because the grounds at Hampton Court Palace are huge. It's sprawling, there's lots of cars, all nicely spread out across the gardens behind the palace, as well as down the entrance road, so the weekends it gets even bigger than when we were there on the Friday. Following closely up behind is Salon Prive. So this is in the grounds of Blenheim Palace. It's a nice open field. There's also a lot of cars on the approach, so they have special parking for interesting cars that arrive, as well as some cars lined up for different collections on the way in. So a pretty decent size event. That scores a 3. And then finally, we've got the London Concours. Now, the London Concours is at the Honorary Artillery Company in the middle of London, and so it is hemmed in by buildings on all 4 sides. It's basically one big sports ground that is turned over for use for vehicles. However, the cricket pitch in the middle is cordoned off, so that does take some of the space as well, which means that is the smallest of the 3 events and is going to score a 1.
Ferrari 275 GTB by Scaglietti.
So, number of vehicles on display is our second criteria. So this is sort of linked to the size. So without doubt, Hampton Court Palace scores the best because it has the most vehicles. It has a huge array of vehicles from those that are actually in the Concours of Elegance and those that are from companies that are bringing vehicles that are for sale, as well as just enthusiasts and car clubs that are welcomed along, especially at the weekend. That car club group grows quite significantly. So that's going to score a 5. Closely followed by Salon Prive. So at Blenheim, there is a large number of vehicles because it's got quite a lot of space. And so that's going to score a 3. However, despite its very small footprint, the London Concours does pack in quite a lot of vehicles because they don't have any moving displays. It's all static displays. They are quite closely packed in, which means I feel a bit harsh giving it a 1. So we're going to give that a 2.
98 of these cars were built. They were stylishly understated, as you can see, and sporting at once.
Okay, so range and scope of vehicles on display. I'm going to start with the London Concours and Salon Prive, who I'm both going to give 3. Both of those events had a reasonable mix of vehicles. We had a little bit of what I would call vintage, but a very small number. Generally, they are sort of 60s to 90s with a few sort of slightly more modern supercars added in for the sort of 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. So a reasonable mix, but not the biggest variety, but both about the same. So 3 for those. And the Concours of Elegance is going to score a 5 because the array of vehicles there is everything from vintage, 1920s and earlier, some Georgian vehicles often on display there, right through to modern supercars with lots of different varieties from different decades in between. So really, really good mix there at Hampton Court Palace. Well, that's always a good start. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, the next score is around the number of stalls. So this is vendors' stalls, things that aren't food and drink. We'll get to that in a second. So this is things selling, clothing, apparel, magazines, parts, spares, restoration services, or even vehicle retailing as well. So we're going to score, first of all, the London Concours as a 1. Sadly, it's quite a small event. There's a couple of places selling, locally made gins and whiskies, a couple selling clothes, nothing really that much. I think there was 1 selling, vehicles with a few vehicles on display, but it is very, very space limited. However, we come to Salon Prive and there was a huge array of stalls actually at Salon Prive. So I'm going to give Salon Prive a 5 for this because actually I think they had a better array there than the bigger event at Concours of Elegance. They had quite a few watch stalls doing vintage watches, which is something that I find quite interesting. They had a stall there selling quite funky stuff, including the little Microlino, which is very, very cool. As well as sort of vintage clothes, Connolly leather, restoration companies, all those sorts of things. So that is definitely a 5 for Salon Prive, and that leaves a 3 for Concours of Elegance. A reasonable mix, but not quite as much as there was at Blenheim Palace. Okay, similarly, number and type of food vendors. So once again, the condensed and compact size of the London Concourse means there was only a couple of food vendors for general admission. There was a couple down by the 1980s cars, the sort of modern classics, and a couple on the entrance side as you came in. Most of the catering was really focused on the VIP and hospitality, so that scores a measly 1. And then we move on up to Salon Prive. Salon Prive had a big area, especially for food vendors, and a couple of other sort of snacky things and coffee vendors scattered around the stalls around the outside of the event. So I would give that one a 5. There was also a number of different tiers of hospitality there, all looked to be serving really nice food. Unfortunately, we didn't go into hospitality at that event. But yes, a 5 for Salon Prive. That leaves the Concours of Elegance with a 3, a reasonably good array of food split on either side of the field, but not quite as much as was going on at Salon Prive. Okay, so the next thing is around additional entertainment. So these events are all about the cars and wandering around, looking at the stalls, talking to people, but some of the events do offer some additional items. The main one really here, and the highest scoring of them all, is actually the London Concourse, because it doesn't offer the drive around Concours of Elegance type event. They've decided to branch out into other things. So if you're in hospitality, there is access to an evening event which happens on the field where they have live music. Unfortunately, we did have access to the hospitality, but I didn't realise it was an evening event, and I booked my train home for the afternoon. So we didn't get to stay for that event, but had we realised, we would have stayed on and got a hotel in London. They also do, at the London Concourse, a live recording of the Smith and Sniff podcast. So those that are familiar with Richard Porter and Johnny Smith, they do a very funny podcast that once a year is recorded at the London Concourse.
I'm Richard Porter.
I'm Johnny Smith.
And this is Smith and Sniff, a podcast in which two friends talk about cars live in London.
So as a result, London scores a 5 from me, and that leaves Hampton Court Palace for the Concours of Elegance and Blenheim Palace for Salon Prive, both of which score a 3 because they both have the moving event, they have the Concours of Elegance, but as far as I'm aware, neither has an on-site evening event, although I do believe they host for VVIPs an event elsewhere, but not for us plebs in the general public.
The 1956 Ferrari 410 Super America, nicknamed Super Fast. I think just looking at it deserves a round of applause, absolutely. Look at the fins. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm looking at the car and it looks like it's moving. It looks like it's going, excuse the pun, super fast. Just looking at it. Wow! The 410 Super America, the only one built with this Pininfarina unique coachwork. It's like a futuristic car. Look at the fins.
Okay, probably one of the most important things for the whole event is ticket costs. So London Concourse comes in at £55, with Salon Prive coming in at £75 and Concours of Elegance coming in at £95. So clearly Concours of Elegance is going to score 1 in this instance. It is a very expensive event, but I would argue probably worth it, but we'll soon find out. Salon Prive at £75 is relatively good, so it's sort of sitting middle ground. It's going to score 3. I'd be no good as a game show host, would I? And London Concourse is the value event of the 3 at £55 a head, so that scores a 5. Talking about an event of extremes, we showed you the little AC Invi car, and you can probably just see in the corner of the screen there is a Bugatti. But you want to see something really cool? There's a, well, naked Bugatti. Okay, probably the most important score, weatherproofing. We are in the UK. All three of these events are in the UK, and the weather is utterly unpredictable. However, Concours of Elegance in September always seems to have good weather, so this has never really been a problem. But we're going to start with the London Concourse. So the London Concourse has lots of undercover areas for hospitality and VIPs, but nothing for the general public. So when it rains, which it did the week of the London Concourse quite a lot, your choices as general admission are an umbrella, sweet talk one of the stall holders to stand under their tiny little tent, or go and stand in the Honourable Artillery Company building where there isn't really anything on display. It's only really open for toilets and a cloakroom. So it is a bit of a problem. There were a lot of people getting very, very wet who hadn't come prepared with umbrellas. Now, moving on to Salon Prive. So again, that was another wet event for us this year. However, that has a huge undercover area. So they have like a cruciform-shaped marquee or glass house, which is erected in the gardens in front of the palace, which is open to anybody to wander through, and they have vehicles on display there, mainly from vehicle companies like Callum Design or some of the modification companies, the Singer and the likes, and some smaller car companies. So Morgan had a display stand in there as well. So that was really good. When the rain came down, everybody was able to descend, and there was plenty of space for everybody inside that marquee cum glass house, whatever you wish to call it. And obviously then additional undercover areas for VIP and hospitality areas. But in addition to that, because there was quite a lot of stalls, there was also other areas you could go and shield from the rain. So that scores a 5. Then we come on to Concours of Elegance. Now, Concours of Elegance offers very little undercover space. We've never really had an issue with that because it's always been good weather while we've been there, which has been very lucky. But there are some undercover spaces. Some of the bar areas have an extended sort of marquee space. Obviously, if you're in hospitality and VIP, there's big marquees for that. Otherwise, you are a little bit left to your own devices. There are plenty of trees on the grounds, so you can go and hide in there. But unfortunately, because the palace is having some renovation, you can't actually go into the palace, which we used to be able to do, into some of the cloister areas, which is where the toilets were. And so you could shelter from the rain there should you need. So I'm afraid for Concours of Elegance, it is going to be a 1 as well. So penultimate scoring is the display of vehicles. Clearly what you want to see is the vehicles moving. You don't want a static display like a museum. You want to hear them start. You want to see them move. You want to learn about them and how they flow. And unfortunately for the London Concourse, because of the space, there isn't really the opportunity for those vehicles to be moved around. So they are on static display. So I'm afraid that scores a 1. And then we've got the Salon Prive at Blenheim Palace. Now that does have a full concourse that runs through. It's just over a little podium in front of the palace. It's all very nice, but it isn't quite the same as the Concours of Elegance, which has the lovely fountain in the gardens at the palace at Hampton Court, where the vehicles drive up, drive around onto the little podium there, and then continue back around and back to where they were displayed. So there's not a huge amount in it, so I'm actually going to give Blenheim Palace a 4, and I'm going to give Concours of Elegance a 5. Tried to bring you not just the sights, but also the sounds of Concours of Elegance. Listen to this. So the final scoring criteria is about access to the event. So all the events are on relatively flat ground. So in terms of disabled access, they're all pretty good. However, London Concourse has got a few steps to get down to the main field, but they do put in a ramp so you can get around that. But really for access event, I'm thinking about how you get there. So if you live in London, then the London Concourse clearly scores the best because you can jump on the tube and you get to the event. It's about a 5-10 minute walk from the nearest tube station. I'll insert in the comments below which is the nearest tube station because I cannot remember right now. But there is no parking available whatsoever at that event. So that's a bit of a Debbie Downer for me. We're traveling from much further afield. You want to take a nice car to these events. Not that we actually got around to doing that this year with any of the events we went to, but it is quite nice. I have done in the past, take a classic car. We took the Rolls-Royce and the Bentley to Concours of Elegance down at Hampton Court Palace, and that's always a bit of fun. So I'm afraid for London, it scores a 1 because there is no parking and you do have to walk from the nearest tube station. Then we come to Salon Prive. So this has a huge and free car park because obviously this is a place that is open to the general public for walking the grounds and visiting the palace. And when you've got a ticket for the event, it gets you free parking in the grounds of the palace. So excellent. You can drive right to the event, park up, and it's a short walk then into the actual field with all the cars. And then finally, sort of sitting in between, it's Hampton Court Palace, which I'm scoring a 3. It does have parking. You do have to pay for the parking. Always check the car park, Hampton Court Palace edition. Look at the deux chevaux. You can also pay extra for the VIP parking, which is around the back of the palace, where you'll see all sorts of interesting stuff, which we have done in the past. And it gives you access to the back of the event, so you don't have to deal with the riffraff. But unfortunately, because you have to pay for all of the parking, and also, if you go into the VIP parking, you will cross over into the ULEZ zone, so you have to pay for ULEZ as well, which is not ideal. So I'm scoring that a 3. So with all of that in mind, what are the scores on the doors? So I've decided to give these 3 events an elegant score. I'm going to call it the elegant score because it's a very elegant calculation. I've just basically put it in Excel and done an average of the row of scores. But what that means is I have an average which gives them a scoring between 1 and 5, and I can therefore rank the events. So coming in 3rd place is the London Concours. It is a compact bijou event and it is a static event, but it is very affordable. So it's a good way into the concours event scene and lots of really good and interesting things to see. However, it scores down because it is a static event, and that comes in an average of 2.1 on the elegant score. Next up with 3.3 on the elegant score is the Concours of Elegance at Hampton Court Palace. So this is a very diverse event with a lot going on. It is a mobile event, so you get to see the Concours of Elegance where they drive the vehicles around the fountain. However, it is quite an expensive event, especially when you add on the additional parking and, depending on where you're parking, the ULEZ as well. So you guessed it, Salon Prive at Blenheim Palace scores top with an average on the elegant score of 3.9. So that means it is the best event, and that's because it offers a bit of a range of things. We've got the mobile event, we've got the concourse with the platform in front of the palace, which is great. Not quite as spectacular as a Hampton Court Palace, but you still get to see the cars moving around. You still get to hear them and see them being driven by the owners or their representatives, which is great fun. There's lots of undercover space, so it is protected from the weather. You can still have a great day out if it absolutely buckets it down. And there's plenty to see. There's a good mix of vehicles from lots of different decades, and there's lots of food, and there's lots of stalls. So you can go out and have a great day without having to pay for hospitality. So that is the Automotive Tales top tip. Get yourself to Blenheim Palace for Salon Prive, where you'll see some amazing things. And you will have just seen on Harry's Garage, he's done a video of his little trip to Salon Prive, which was rather special. He was a very lucky boy, and he got to drive his fellow farmer, Lord Bamford's Ferrari 250 GTO, one of the 2 Ferrari 250 GTOs that Lord Bamford took to the show. So very special. So those were on display and almost didn't stand out amongst all the other amazing things. So what a great event. And I think that means, because of a 3.9 score on our elegant score, we will be going back to Salon Prive next year. So join us next year on Automotive Tales, where we go and check out the best concourse event in the UK. Right, that's all from me. Bye for now. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.